Hello everyone, Louis V here from Vinyl Latte, where we have a cup of coffee and we talk about records. And today I'm going to share with you some of my latest additions to the collection. I've had the opportunity to travel to a lot of different record stores lately. I live in North Carolina. I was out in California, and I picked up some really cool records. So today we're going to be sharing kind of a hodgepodge of genres. I'm really a music collector of all sorts, I have some hip hop, I have some rock, I have some punk, I have jazz. We just got an assortment today, so I think there's going to be a little bit for everyone. And I'm going to start out with what I feel is a personal grail of mine that I picked up at Needle in the Groove record store in San Jose, and that's Eazy-E's Easy-Duz-It. This is Eazy's debut album. It's notable for its raw lyrics and is considered a foundational album in the gangster rap genre. It's produced by Dr. Dre and DJ Yella, and it kind of portrays this gritty, portrayal of like the street life in Compton. On this album, if you've seen the movie Straight Outta Compton, and you remember the scene where Eazy's in the booth with Dr. Dre and he's struggling on getting the lyrics. The lyrics, cruising down the street in my 6'4". Well, that song is called Boys in the Hood, and it's on here. It's right before the title track, Easy-Duz-It, and I think those two tracks are essential Eazy songs. I'm very happy to have this album in my collection. This is a very good plus copy of the original pressing. It's the first pressing, OG pressing, 1988, and in my opinion, this is the one to have because it sounds great. It's got great low end, everything just comes together well. It sounds like a modern pressed hip hop record, and there's something magical about putting this record on your turntable and just transcending time and going back to an era when, just how young everyone on this record was, how inexperienced, Eric, Cube, Dre, Ren, Yella, that whole crew was. Not knowing what is about to happen in their future, I just think there's something cool and magical about that. Now, some say the lyrics on this album, they really haven't aged well. And some will argue that NWA's album, Straight Outta Compton, is just a little bit more important to the catalog of the time. But I think this album stands out. I think it's a significant chapter in hip-hop history, and I'm really, really happy to have that album. Another album that stands out in hip-hop history is this reissue. This is a reissue of Black Sheep in a sheep in wolf's clothing. This particular one is a rainbow pressing with its lacquer cut at better quality sound. The release year on this one is a little bit unknown. We believe it's a 98 because the run-outs are a little bit different from the 91 pressing. And in my opinion, it sounds okay. I think it's a little bit lacking in the dynamics and the soundstage overall. The song here that everybody loves, and probably the reason you would purchase this album, is a song called The Choice Is Yours. It has that very iconic build-up on verse 3 of engine number 9 on the New York Transit line. If my train falls off the track, pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. That song is on this album. That's the song you would want to crank. And when I did, it was a little bit uneventful. So I hope to pick up a better quality pressing of this record in the near future. Actually, I really hope somebody reissues it or represses it or remasters it, because I think it really deserves that. We've been seeing a lot of hip-hop albums get repressed thanks to the 50 years of hip-hop. I think that one deserves it. Really good attention. So hopefully somebody out there will take advantage of that and get it repressed. Switching genres a little bit up, but still sticking with, a debut album here. This is R.E.M's Murmur. And what's cool about this album is that it was completely unexpected when it came out. No one knew about what was going to happen. You got to remember that when this album came out, R.E.M. was a relatively unknown band, right? And this album drops, and it's got strange lyrics. It's got this weird guitar sound. It's really, really different from anything from mainstream rock at the time. And then they put on this kind of weird cover, right? So the title Murmur kind of means it's important but not important. It's sort of this in between of being significant and not significant. They got this, Georgia vine thing going on here on the cover. The track titles are hard to read. When people even saw this album, you really thought it was destined to fail. But you'd be wrong. You'd definitely be wrong. Now, we know that because we live in the future, not at that present time. But Murmur crushed it. He really crushed it. Not only was it critically acclaimed, Rolling Stones awarded it Album of the Year, beating out Michael Jackson's Thriller. Can you believe? Now, this particular pressing, this is an 83 Monarch pressing. You can identify that. There's like a little C in parentheses at the bottom of the label, and it kicks. This soundstage on this, the dynamics on this are amazing, especially for a 40-plus-year-old record. And in my mind, this particular pressing is a definitive pressing. In fact, if you're an R.E.M. fan and you believe there's a different copy of Murmur that sounds better than that 83 Monarch, I challenge you. Well, challenge me, I should say. Put it in the comments. I love to pick up a copy and give it sort of this A-B comparison and really see if we can punch that sound up a little bit better. But to me, that's a definitive copy. Sticking with R.E.M., we also have this 99 UK pressing of Document. This one was mastered by Bob Ludwig. It was pressed on 180 gram vinyl. And this is their 5th album, as indicated right here in the top corner. And it's got some killer tracks on here. It's got Strange and It's the End of the World as We Know It, right? 2 really great songs that you hear on the radio all the time. And this particular copy is mint. It sounds great, and I'm super, super, super happy to have it. I also have this pressing. This is a 1980 pressing of Los Angeles by X. This is released on Slash Records. And if you're not familiar, this is sort of a seminal album in the punk rock genre. It's produced by Ray Manzarek of The Doors. He also played organ on here as well. The album even covers a Doors song called Soul Kitchen. And if this album's new to you, if you're not really familiar who or what this is, you might have heard some of the tracks here, because multiple songs in this album has been featured in various media, including some video games. So if you're a Tony Hawk fan or if you played Rock Band, you've likely have heard those songs before. Then we're going to kind of fast forward about 2 decades, and we're going to talk about this 98 Atlantic pressing of Jewel Spirit. This is mastered at Gateway Mastering, and this copy is near mint. There's a small little corner dent there that kind of maybe pulls it into the VG Plus category, but otherwise it's pristine. The record's pristine. The cover's really, really great. This was Jewel's sophomore album. It followed the Pieces of You album, and it includes some mainstream songs here. It's got Down So Long, it's got Jupiter, it's got Hands, so some radio play songs on here. But unfortunately, this album just never was able to grab the limelight away from Pieces of You. And it's a real shame, because this is definitely an underrated album. Jewel's voice on this album sounds incredible. She's got an incredible voice. The album sounds great. The songs are great. It's really a shame that Pieces of You kind of overshadow Spirit, and this one's not regarded as high as it should be. I think if they were released differently, if this came out before Pieces of You, everybody would be gathering and clamoring for this album, and then it would be like, oh my god, Pieces of You was even better. But because Pieces of You had such an impact and Spirit came out after, it was just hard to top for Jewel. And it's a shame. It's a shame. So I recommend picking that up, especially if you're a Jewel fan, or if you really enjoy Pieces of You, pick it up. And another somewhat underrated album is Tracy Chapman's Crossroads. Now, this was released originally, I think, in '89. It followed her self-titled album, her debut album, just Tracy Chapman. That one is really popular because of the hit song Fast Car, which is now being relived and recovered, and you know, it's just on the radio all the time now, and the sales of that album have skyrocketed because of the interest resurfacing for that song, which is well deserved. That's a great album. You know, it's Tracy really nailed that album in its entirety. I wish they would get a little bit more attention than it does. It just seems like people listen to Fast Car and that's it. But that whole album is really good, and so is this one. Chapman on this particular album, she really digs deep into the themes of social inequality and politics, and she kind of has this like really gets personal on this album. Now she's got, you know, the title track here, Crossroads and Freedom Now. They are dedicated to Mandela. They're dedicated to Mandela, and it really showcases Chapman's continued commitment to blending this like profound lyrical content with this expressive musical style. And while this album did see good commercial success, it just never mirrored the success of her self-titled album. So that's kind of a shame. For this one particularly, this is the 89 specialty pressing. It's mastered by Bob Ludwig. It was released with Elektra, and I think it really sounds great. I'm happy again to have it in the collection. And there's some of the ones I just showed you there have been ones that were kind of personal grails. I've been really seeking those particular years and those particular albums. So I was really happy to add them to the collection recently, including this next one. And the next couple records are all going to be Mobile Fidelity records. So I got 4 in a row, and then we're going to switch it out of Mobile Fidelity. And I know that there's sort of this controversy on Mobile Fidelity, if they're really great audiophile records or not. I'm not going to get into that. I like records that sound great. I like records that really make my mind escape into the music. And I like listening to music that, to me, has a connection. And that's what this one is, right? So this is Supertramp's Breakfast in America. It was originally released in '79. And this album resonated with audiences worldwide. It was a commercial success. It achieved platinum status in like 4 months in the US. There's a lot of notable songs on here. You got Goodbye Stranger, the Logical Song, Take the Long Way Home, just so many good radio hits on here. And then even the album cover featuring this diner waitress posing as the Statue of Liberty with a view of Manhattan made up with breakfast items. This won the 1980 Grammy for Best Recording Packaging, and it became an iconic cover because of it. Now, this particular one is from 2018, and despite, like I said, what people said about Mobile Fidelity, I think this one sounds great. Now, I don't have the original, and I don't have the Nimbus Supercut to compare it with, but I didn't have any problems with surface noise. I didn't have overpowering bass, the 2 major complaints people have with that album. I think the pressing sounds wonderful, and until I hear another one that kind of blows this one out of the water, I'm sticking with it. This is my go-to copy. Sticking with rock, we have The Pretenders, self-titled album, originally released in 1980. This is their debut album, and it features this kind of unique blend of rock and new wave. And if you like this, you know, this raw, aggressive guitar work, you're really gonna love this album. The opening riff of Precious is just really great. You got the hit single, Brass in Pocket, and Kid. This album just delivers. If that's your style, if that's the music you love, you're gonna love this album. If you haven't given it a spin yet, pick one up and give it a spin. This is particularly from 2016. Another MoFi, of course. It's pressed at RTI, 180 gram vinyl, and to me, it sounded okay. Based on Discogs, this is the definitive one to get. It's near perfection on the reviews, etc. But in my experience, I wanted a little bit more bottom end, and it's probably not what you really get out of that type of record. It's not supposed to probably have a lot of bottom end, but I felt like it was missing that. I felt like I wanted more, I don't know, more, I wanted to feel it more. You also have to crank up the volume on this one a little bit, which is fine. It's not a bad thing. I don't mind records where you have to hire it up just to get the sound. I'd rather them do that than add some sort of, you know, way to like limit it or whatever. I want to be able to hear everything, even if I have to crank it. But even after cranking it, I felt like it was missing something. And I need to go back and listen to what it is. Maybe I just listened to it in a bad day, or maybe I was distracted mentally on something. For me, it's a solid 4 out of 5, maybe a 4.5 out of 5. I may give this one again another spin soon and just dive into it. And if I feel like there's a difference, I'll leave some comments in this video to say, hey, I rewatched it, I re-listened to it, and here's my thoughts. Okay, so next up, Grateful Dead's Workingman's Dead, originally released in 1970. This album marked a very pivotal moment for the band, especially with its sound. They shifted more towards this acoustic material and Americana influences and really brought change to the band's harmonies. And they were all well delivered. Rolling Stone's Reader Choice, Best Album of 1970. There's iconic tracks on here. You got Uncle John's Band, Dire Wolf, Casey Jones. Great album overall. And this is a 2023 remaster pressing. It's another one that just sounds wonderful. I've never really been a Deadhead, but I really enjoyed this album. And I think most of that is because it just sounded so good. If you ever had an album like that, where, maybe it's not your go-to musical style, but you put it on and it forces you to sit down and appreciate it. It forces you to connect with the music, to really be present. And I felt that when I was listening to that particular album. So I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. If you do, support me here. But if you don't, that's fine. Maybe I'm just a little bit crazy. Because we got this one. This is Big Brother and the Holding Company, Cheap Thrills. This one features Janis Joplin, whose powerful voice really drove this album to widespread acclaim, commercial success. And what's interesting about this album is that it portrays being recorded at this live performance. However, it was all done in a studio. So it's kind of weird, right? It features a blend of original and cover songs, again, kind of furthering that live performance element. It does have a standout single, Piece of My Heart. It's probably a song you heard on the radio. It was originally released in '68, but this one is from 2016. And I gotta say it was okay sounding. Again, I felt like, maybe it was a little bit lacking. The opening track just kind of came off a little bit soft for me. I don't think it's a bad sounding record. I just feel like when you really unpack it and you understand what was being done, the fact that it was done in a studio and not in a live performance, I expected more. I know that live, they probably did it that way because they wanted to make it sound like it was from a live performance, but I just wish they would have done more. I think the music on there and Janis's voice deserves that studio treatment. All right, I got a few more here, and we're going to kind of change it over to some heat. We're going to drop some heat, if you will, and we're going to start out with Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. In my personal opinion, this is the album that is the definition of disco and also has some of the best Bee Gees work ever done. You got tracks like Staying Alive, More Than a Woman, You Should Be Dancing. It's not hard to put this album on your turntable and get your body moving. That's what this album does. And in addition to the Bee Gees on here, you got Kool and the Gang, Casey and the Sunshine Band, you got the Tramps, you got so many great bands here. This particular one is the Back to Black 2017 reissue, pressed at GZ Media. It sounds great, and while it's not an audiophile record by any means, it's everything it should be for being a disco record. I give it like a 4.5 out of 5 on that one. Really surprised me. I didn't know it was going to move me as much as it did, but it's great sounding. Next we have The Meters. This is Fire on the Bayou. This is the expanded edition by Music on Vinyl, which includes 5 additional tracks. This was originally recorded in New Orleans, and the album really encapsulates this essence of Southern soul with a blend of funk, R&B, instrumentals, and you got some soul built into here. And frankly, it was a flop when it came out. Nobody liked it. It wasn't a hit record. Kind of didn't do well. I think it's honestly one of those things that you just learn to appreciate over time. I think this album particularly was ahead of its time. I think if you listen to this album years ago and you come back to it now, I think you're going to appreciate it more. Personally, I think this sounds good. It has good dynamics. It's punchy. I'm happy with it. I just, it's one of those albums that either you're going to really love the music or you're not on that. I think I like the music now because my taste has matured. I'm listening to things that probably I really didn't listen to when I was younger. I would recommend giving it a go. It was a good album. So really starting to wind us down now, we have ABBA's first album in 39 years. Can you imagine 39 years? And honestly, it sounds like they never left the studio. Oh my God, it sounds like they never took a break. This album is very reminiscent of their work from the 70s and 80s with a touch of modern flair. This particular one is the widely distributed US and EU version, which I think is pressed by Polar or on Polar's label. Some people have some sound issues on this one. Mine sounds fine. It's quiet where it needs to be. It sounds good, has nice, wide, good dynamics. I mean, I was happy with it. And I remember I listened to this and I was like, well, there's a lot of complaints on the sound quality on this one. I'm going to give it another re-listen. And I did. And I'm like, no, my ears aren't hearing things. I'm not putting things there that don't belong there. It really does sound good. I think this is one of those albums that either you get stuck with a bad copy or you get stuck with a good copy. I fortunately got a good copy. My recommendation, if you're looking to pick that up, pick one up from a place where you can easily do a return and hopefully you can land yourself a clean copy. Okay, we got Tame Impala Currents. This was released in 2015. It really marked a significant shift in sound. They moved from a psych rock to this synth-driven psychedelic pop style. And Kevin Parker, who is the mastermind behind Tame Impala, he wrote, recorded, performed, and produced this album entirely by himself. It reflects Parker's personal transformation, dealing with themes of change and this emotional evolution, and he kind of symbolized this on the album cover, which really depicts this vortex and kind of representing this flow of change going around you through life. This is a 2015 pressing. Pressed at United, released under Interscope, and it boasts an impressive sound quality. It's got, again, good dynamic range, broad soundstage, really making for an outstanding album and a great listening experience. Now, I promised you some Latin. I told you I have a little bit for everyone, and here it is, Joe Bataan's Mr. New York and the East Side Kids. I want to make sure I got that right. And if you're not familiar, this is a unique blend of Latin soul, salsa, and boogaloo. Joe's voice here is so smooth. Joe just has such a smooth voice, and I love how the sound combines with these Latin rhythms and this urban feel of New York City. And I believe this particular one, this pressing, is from the early 2000s. It's minty copy. It sounds amazing. I really love this album, and I honestly, I really love this kind of music. It's music that kind of went under my radar for a really long time, and I'm glad that I'm kind of discovering this. To me, it's like a whole new catalog of music. This is a great record to add to your collection. Give it a chance. I think you'll really enjoy it. Okay, we're down to the final one. And I said that we were going to have some jazz. So we're going to end with some jazz. And here it is. We got our final record, Alice Coltrane's Journey into Satchidananda. Satchidananda? Not really sure. So we're just going to call this Alice Coltrane's Journey album. This is her seminal album into the world of spiritual jazz. It was originally released in 71, and it kind of stands out as a monumental moment for Coltrane, and especially in her discography. It offers this kind of fusion between jazz and this Indian classical music and spiritual transcendence. The album's title, that I can't pronounce, plays homage to her spiritual guru and really dives deep into the realms of spirituality and this sort of musical innovation that she was going through at the time. This is the 2023 acoustic sound series reissued. It's mastered by Ryan Smith. It sounds wonderful, just like every acoustic, productions, acoustic series. They're one of my favorite labels. I don't know very many acoustic productions or acoustic sound records that just I mean, they're just so good. It's just such a good label. If you're new to collecting vinyl and you're like, hey, how do I get some great sounding records? Seek out the brand, this label, and I don't think you're going to go wrong. There's always exceptions, but they really nail it almost every time. Excellent dynamics, excellent balance. It's crank worthy. You're going to want to crank it. The soundstage is wide. Honestly, I don't know how this album could sound any better. And it's another one that if you believe that it does, if you think there's another copy out there, share it with me. I really want to figure out if there is a way to get that to sound better, because to me, that's perfection. Well, folks, that's a wrap of the episode. I really appreciate you hanging in there with me through the entire new grabs. I got some other ones coming up for you as well. Do all the YouTube stuff, help support the channel. This is my first episode, so if you made it this far, thank you for the early on support. And I will end with, I hope that your records don't skip and your coffee is always hot. And we'll see you next time.